Hey everyone, morning. Morning.
Morning.
Hey, wake up. Right. So that pretty much summarizes the state of Asha. So we are in the 24th year of our existence, and we now only have 53 chapters across all 4 countries. So if you look at all 4 continents, 3 continents, yeah. So if you look at that number has been coming down, and we'll talk about it more in the secretary slides. In 2014, we disbursed about 2.85 million, and we raised close to 3 million. So that number has more or less been constant over the last few years, which is good. Uttara will cover that in the Treasury section. And yeah, we are still sticking to our principles of being decentralized and democratic decision-making organization, right? None of that has changed, and we still operate with minimal overhead, which is good. Okay, so the highlights of the last 2 years since Asha 22 were that we are back as a 4-star charity on Charity Navigator. Woohoo! So this was something which a lot of people were concerned about, because our charity rating went from 4 to 3 to 2. And most of it was because we didn't have a financial audit, and everything was like a fallout of that. But thanks to Uttara, we have been able to get that done and then get our 4-star. We were recently awarded the Times of India Social Impact Award in the international category. So kudos on that to everyone as well. And yes, one of our project partners, Kailash Satyarthi, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. But then we just posted a site visit which we had of the project. So the project was actually run by his wife, but it's affiliated with the larger organization which won the Peace Prize. So
Where is the project? Where is the project?
where is the project? It's on the Asha main page. Ravi's site visit is there.
Should I have a link to it
We do.
on the main page? We do on the page. Oh, okay, cool.
Or it might have just gotten bumped out, because
Yeah.
if it's the latest news, it stays there. But there are only like three of the latest things which stays.
Leave it there.
We can. So yeah, we had many project partners who got recognized. They had like prominent features in like newspapers, or one award like Mandra Lions did. So many of the project partners are getting recognized, which is good. Biggest recognition, of course, being the Nobel Peace Prize. So as I mentioned, we got the independent financial audits done for 2012 to 2014, finally. And yeah, Uttara is going to talk more about it, I'm guessing. But we did put in a lot of financial policies in place so that we get an unqualified audit every year. So 2012 to 2014 have all been qualified audits, where the auditor says that he's not able to be certain of certain numbers. And that's mostly because of the way we operate in terms of a lot of decentralized handling of finances. So, for example, we need good processes to make sure that every expense of this conference and every registration fee is reported correctly in our books. Every Team Asha donation, every Team Asha registration fee. I mean, every transaction made in the name of Asha needs to be properly reported. And that the auditor is going to be very happy about the controls, only if we have a centralized banking. And we did move to a centralized lockbox in San Francisco, operated by Wells Fargo. So all chapters, all donors are now requested to send their checks directly to the San Francisco lockbox. And because of that, the checks get scanned and deposited immediately. And before this process, the checks used to go to a New York PO box. And it used to take a few months before someone could go pick it up, make an entry of it, and then send it to the bank. And you had irate donors. I'm sure all of you have done. We got a new Asha-wide website. So we'll talk about that in the project, in the web section. And there's also a chapter template ready for any new chapter wanting to hop on. And since it's WordPress, it doesn't require any web knowledge. And any person who wants to edit it can just open it up. It's a GUI, like a word editor, and you can just update whatever you want and publish it. So that should hopefully help many of the smaller chapters who are struggling to maintain their own websites. And hopefully we'll be able to transition a lot of these chapters who still have content from 2008 or 2009 on their front page to this so that they can keep it updated. And lastly, we were able to procure Asha-wide liability insurance and insurance for all volunteers. This was something which was on the books, on the to-do list for a very long time. And finally, we were able to get it done. But what it requires of chapters, as we've been telling all chapters, is that we will need to know what events you guys are hosting or what events you guys are planning to be able to cover it. Right? So they cover only those events which we tell them that we are going to have. So the plan right now is at the end of every year, we ask all chapters to give like an estimate of dates and what events they're going to have. And if chapters plan a new event, they just require to notify us at least like a month in advance so that we can get it added to the insurance. And what this means also is that chapters no longer have to procure their own insurance for any events they will have, which a lot of chapters had to do by themselves. And because we are doing it centrally, we'll have the right name in there. And so people used to get insurances with like personal names there or like Asha, U Florida, whereas if Asha is getting sued, it's going to be like Asha for Education, and the insurance company can just say, we insured Asha U Florida, we don't know what this Asha for Education is. So it's just like.
So if we're operating through a student chapter and they're conducting an event, how would that work out?
You'll need to report the student chapter events as well.
Oh, okay. So that wants to go to the university insurance or anything?
So that's the thing, right? So university insurance mostly protects the student group. It doesn't protect Asha for Education. And that is something I want all student groups to understand. So most of these student groups have university insurance. So let's say, Prahasha is probably not a good example. So Stanford Holy. So let's say someone gets injured in Stanford Holy, right? So they can sue Stanford University because the student group did something bad and it was a liability and the person got hurt. But they can also sue Asha for Education, right? What the university insurance will protect is Stanford University and the student group, but not Asha for Education, right? Which is why we cover that event for Asha for Education through this Asha-wide liability insurance.
So would it be a good idea to have some kind of template for this event information that you want to collect?
Yeah, so I send out a Google form, and there is a link which, where you can add a new event anytime, and it's usually in the coordinator inbox. So, you know it, right? You suddenly had a surprise look on your face. And I'm like,
How much are we paying for this?
this is about $6,000 a year.
And what does the event have to be a certain size?
No, we just want all events to just be mentioned there.
Events like some 20 people at the game.
Oh yeah. So people just put in anything. Like U Florida, I think has a lot of football teams.
We do Shramdan events,
Yeah.
football games.
So it's just volunteers going at football games and helping out, but we just put that as well.
So we, I believe we got those covered through the insurance, central insurance this time, the Shramdan.
What about other events like when we have
All of them.
even the group
Prahasha,
get-togethers?
everything.
Oh, okay.
Does it also cover the train Asha and the run for Asha?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So as long as it is reported, it covers everything. The only thing is the insurance they've excluded explicitly Mount Rainier climbing program, which Asha Seattle has. So they do a Team Asha mountain climbing. So they have excluded that explicitly. And for that, we get the coverage from the company that Asha Seattle engages with. So they have added Asha for Education as an additional insurance.
So would it be good to know what kind of coverages that insurance policy provides on chapter level, or is it not really that required?
For chapter level, it's not really required. So anything which is available for Asha Wide is available for Asha for Education. And since this is a chapter of Asha for Education, the whole coverage applies. So I think it's like a 1 million or a 2 million liability policy. And yeah, if you want to look through it, I can send it to anyone interested.
So basically, I'm like trying to see what is excluded. So there are always fine prints in all the
Yeah.
insurance policies. So if they find some kind of a way to deny the coverage,
Yeah.
you just want to make sure that the chapters or the whole organization is.
So the only explicit coverage is like for that event, they have declined to cover any of our internship activities where we coordinate an internship with someone who goes to India and works at the project. They're like it's international exposure, so they don't cover it. But other than that, we have talked to them extensively on what the operation model is and how we operate, and everything seems to be covered. Yeah, it'll still be good to have someone review it. So if you're up for it, I can sign you on. So work in progress. A big item has been a legal task list. So, I mean, if you just look through Asha archives, there have just been a lot of discussions rather on legal issues of, is Asha's structure even okay, or is it a problem, right? So, is it okay to have an 501c3 with just volunteers all over the place, international chapters, international affiliations, Are there any other funding requirements if you're sending funds to India, because you're taking a 501c3 donation, but you're sending it to India? So there always have been a lot of these questions. But thankfully, this time we were able to get 2 firms to consult with us pro bono. And a lot of these questions have been resolved, more or less. One big item here was the bylaws. So our bylaws were just drafted to register it with the state of California, where we are registered, not New York. So that was done way back in '97, and since then it's not been updated. But then we have moved on to being driven by the ARC, right? But then if you look at the bylaws on paper, it's just the board of directors who's making all the decisions. Board of directors can today decide to dissolve Asha for Education, though I'm guessing we won't do that. But so there's like a lot of disconnect between what the policies are on paper to what is actually being done. And that was kind of a concern when we were trying to get the liability insurance, because they could just go back to the bylaws and say, this is not how you guys are operating. So, that could be like a loophole. The auditors keep asking us for documents about, board of director decisions, and we give them like ARC resolutions, and they're like, what the heck is this? So we are trying to just update these bylaws. So this time on the ARC, you'll see like a humongous proposal on the table. So I don't know if you guys have looked at it yet. It was sent out about a week ago. So it has like some 16 or 17 documents there. One huge one is the bylaws, which is effectively just trying to get our operation in sync with what is there on paper, right? So it's just moving it to like a member-driven organization where every chapter is a member, and all decisions are made by a majority of members, blah blah blah. So you can't call it the ARC; you just call each chapter a member of the organization, and which acts through its chapter representative, who could be either like a chapter coordinator or the ARC. So it's pretty much the same thing. And then we took all the other policies we have as well, and then just put it on paper as to how we start a chapter or how we affiliate with an international organization. There's still one question which the lawyers are debating on, whether the international chapters can be a part of the ARC or not. So that might be the only change to the big ARC proposal which is there. So both the firms effectively have advised us to just have this kind of a chapter agreement in place. So it's like basically a sheet which outlines what the relationship is between Asha for Education and the chapter, which says that these are your responsibilities, this is what you need to do, and it's basically what you guys do right now, but just putting it on paper, right? So you need to be responsible for your financial reporting, you need to be responsible for reporting events so that we get it covered, so stuff like that. The good part, I'm hoping, is that this will also serve as a good resource when the team leadership transitions, because most of the core team work comes in when there's a new team which comes into the chapter, and the old team does not pass on all the info. So hopefully having a document like this will also help them, and will also help to define our relationship with Asha Canada or Asha Zurich or Asha Eindhoven, because they are registered as a separate NGO in that particular country. And they are using Asha for Education's name for operation. So again, a bunch of legalese there about what they can or cannot do. They use our trademarks, use our logo, but remain true in spirit and word to all Asha principles of non-political, non-secular, and non-religious. So stuff like that. So it's just a lot of legalese, but it will be good if chapters do go through that and provide feedback in the ARC cycle as provided, because that's going to be like the policies of Asha going forward. You had a question?
I don't know whether you already touched that point number 2, but how would you for that?
Yes. Okay. So this is again a big item, which is state registrations. So considering the US is so federal in nature, every state pretty much requires us to register in that state for operation. So if you are soliciting funds in a particular state, the laws actually require you to register in that state prior to solicitation of funds. Many places it just applies to a hired fundraiser, which are these people who just pick up the phone, call you, or send you spam. But we are also doing fundraising through our volunteers in each of these states. So we will need to register in each of the states. The big item which was preventing us from doing it in all the states we operate was the audit. And since we got the audit out of the way, this is something which is being worked on. And I'll cover more details in the secretary's slides because Harindra is not here. And the bylaws is what is there as well.
So I'm pretty sure Financial Officer Treasury knows that we can save on sales taxes in each of the states which has sales tax.
Mhm.
So I don't think our chapter has probably ever used that to save sales tax in Florida, at least in Florida.
Yeah,
So
I don't think so.
we couldn't use it until we are state registered, or can the national registration work as well?
I just used it in New York.
Huh?
They're already registered.
Florida.
Yeah.
So is there a list of like companies or chains that normally we can just in advance put our account in to say that, hey, we are a non-profit, because say for example, Office Depot, we can create an account with, and then everything that we have, the card or the account. So is there a list of such companies that we can probably work with and save some money?
You need a 501c3 form,
Yeah, so,
and you just hand them the form.
actually, that's not true in all states. So each state has their own regulation, and so I know for Washington, we just filled out. There's like a form you have to fill out and get registered as either a reseller or just a 501c3, and it's through a different division that does the state registration. So we'll have to look exactly what it is in Florida, but we are registered in Florida. But that's probably not something we're looking to do right now at a central level. If each chapter is interested, we have been coordinating that, like Seattle just did it. So we're happy to help you fill out the forms, but I don't think we probably have the bandwidth until this gets done. So
Wait, I think that would be on the chapter responsibility.
yeah.
Well, the thing also is the
Keep us in the
chapter.
loop and not file any paperwork with the state without letting the central team know that. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Does that too. We are registered, we are officially registered in New York, but we have to apply for
Yeah.
state tax exemption separately.
Right, okay.
And I think we've done the same thing in Missouri where we have the St. Louis chapter.
So I'll cover those things in the secretary things because there are quite a few nuances there I want to talk about. And speaking of things to be done, volunteer bandwidth, volunteer attrition, something we hear about all the time. That is true. So a couple of years ago, we had the campaign called I Am Asha. I don't know how many of you know about it. So basically, this was a time to get a lot of social media on what Asha is, like put out a lot of things about volunteering with Asha, what the opportunities are. And at that time, what we realized was out of like 20 or 30 signups we got, half of them were from places where there was no Asha chapter. And we had no meaningful way of engaging them for anything. Because initially you had to have a place where you could put them in so that they know what Asha is before they could contribute meaningfully. Right? Which is when we also started pushing out this proposal for a virtual chapter. And the ARC approved a virtual chapter, which is going to be like one virtual chapter per country if they so require it. So this is virtual chapter will be a place where volunteers from anywhere can just call in, participate. So it will again start as a satellite chapter, and then be updated to a full chapter provided there's like enough volunteer bandwidth. And the hope is that if a volunteer comes in, gets very engaged with Asha, likes it, he should be able to get more volunteers in his locality and form a local chapter and start a local chapter there, instead of trying to sustain or start small local chapters and the core team is just trying to coordinate so many of these small things that it's just becoming infeasible. Arun?
So I wanted to know if we have do we actually know anything about numbers for volunteers?
Numbers for volunteers, we report 1,500,
Yeah.
but the secretary team can probably pull out numbers. So we have these almost annual chapter health questionnaires where we ask how many like active volunteers, how many inactive volunteers you have. So we can pull up data from that. I would presume that would come to maybe 500 volunteers
Across the 30 something.
across all the chapters,
In the US.
Only US.
No, all over.
all over.
All over just 500.
Well, I'm not counting India. Other chapters.
Officially, we report 1500.
Yeah, but so no. So the thing is, the volunteers in this do not count all like the Team Asha runners and a lot of those people who would probably just come to one event and help out. Whereas in the chapter health questionnaire, they talk about how many core volunteers you have and how many volunteers you have coming in on a continuous
But
basis.
do all chapters have the same definition for what a core volunteer is or what a volunteer is or anything, or everybody just decides based on?
Everybody just decides.
Questionnaire had pretty good definition of what it means. So they had definitions on there. So hopefully they try to follow that. So attend so many meetings and takes part in project discussions. So hopefully they followed that.
Yeah. Okay. The big thing in Asha is we have a very collective decision-making process, but that needs to be accompanied by collective ownership. Otherwise, we have this case where decisions are made by the group and they just fall onto the one person who is executing it, and the person ends up doing something which he either did not support or was not really very enthusiastic about, leading to inevitable burnout. So this as an organization is something we really need to think about, both at the chapter level and Asha-wide levels, right? And commitment levels and ownership is something which people will need to have. I mean, if they sign up for something, they need to just deliver. Take ownership and deliver, I think is. So even if it's like a really small task, it doesn't need to be like this humongous project, but whatever small thing you sign up for, just make sure you deliver on it. And if you're not able to, just communicate it to the chapter coordinator who can hopefully find someone else to do it, or at least know that it's not going to get done instead of trying to wait for it. And this is a problem which we hear about like across chapters, which we should change. And if you're looking for something to do for the next few months, there is the annual reports for 2010 to 2014, which are still pending. Because I'll talk about that in the PR section. And there was the idea floated a while ago about having a project partner conference. So if people think that this is a good idea for all of project partners to meet somewhere in India, hopefully a centralized location, and kind of exchange notes, think of collaboration they could do with each other, find out what worked, what did not work, that would be great to organize. But we have very limited bandwidth in India to do this. So it will be kind of hard, but if someone wants to take it up and someone is really enthusiastic, hit me up and we'll see how we might be able to do it. Yeah.
We can do that.
Can do that?
Yes. Because since we are in India,
Yeah.
Definitely we will coordinate this. We want to do such, because I'm connected with one big organization in Bombay, Caring Friends.
Okay.
It's an informal group, it's not registered anywhere. But they are like connected with 30 plus organizations in India. And every year for 4 days they are meeting together. And like having such type of conferences, like teaching, like talking about finances, talking about education, talking about health. Many, because there are many organizations, they are not connected with many things actually. They're working in India, but such conferences are helping many organizations to understand what other organizations are doing, and they are like implementing that those things. So such conference is really important. So if you feel that if you are already planning to do it, yes, I'm ready for it. Yeah, volunteering there.
That's great. Yeah, no.
How different would this be than the Asha India conference?
So Asha India conference is typically just Asha India chapters, which is the 4 metro. So it's Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai, and Hyderabad. Delhi is not active anymore, and all the UP chapters where they run their own projects. So Asha India is typically just that. But last year we said Asha India conference will also invite local like UP projects, and I think only a couple of them turned up. But the agenda there is focused very much on Asha India, right? It's effectively their Asha India board meeting, their annual meeting which they need to do every year. Whereas this would be something more generic and something more applicable for everyone. Okay, I think I touched upon most of these, so I'll just skip through them. Pro bono attorneys, pro bono ARC, liability insurance. Okay, the last one was something which was brought up in Asha 22, where we said, there's just so many communication. We had, I think, like 25 email groups, and most of them were not being used. People didn't know what list to send upon, which I hear even now. But right now, we are down to just 3 lists. So there is a projects group at ashanet.org. So projects group at ashanet.org is effectively all project stewards. So if you're not on it, please sign up for it, because that is where all project-related emails are sent out, right? And projects group at ashanet.org should also include all the chapter name.projects at ashanet.org ID by default. So all the chapter name.projects should get mail sent out to that, and they can circulate it to volunteers at the local level if they want. And there's another group which is discussions at ashanet.org, which is every non-project related discussion. So ARC, like PR, fundraising, events, Team Asha, because those things don't come up as often right now. We just have one list for all of that, and that is discussions at ashanet.org. And if you're interested in any of that, sign up for that. We just have a few aliases as well, which you can send out emails to, which is one is chapters at ashanet.org, which will be to all the chapter name at ashanet.org IDs. So which will be UFlorida at ashanet.org or Stanford at ashanet.org. So it's a good way to communicate to all the chapter coordinators. And there is a catch-all ID, which is all.volunteers at ashanet.org, which is like basically goes to all of these groups. And that's it. So
Refer to the last previous slide. Okay. Is there something similar to Asha Central that you have in US, in India?
So the official Asha India, Asha Trust board has volunteers from like UP, Asha Chennai, and Mumbai, and there's also one person from Punjab who's not connected but works with them.
Sorry, what's the bandwidth? I mean, what's the number of volunteers there?
At Asha India Conference 2014, actually no, 2015, I think had about 35 attendees, something like that. Yeah. But the way they operate is their decision making is based on a majority vote of people present at the conference. It's not like an ARC thing. So their decisions are made during the conference, and it's just a majority of how many other people are there.
So it's a legally different organization than
Yes. Yeah. So all of the international organizations are legally different organizations. So Asha India is Asha Trust. Asha Zurich is some name I cannot pronounce, and same for Asha India. All right. So secretary team. Like I said, the main task of the secretary team, secretary is Harindra now from Asha Stanford. So the main task is to get Asha registered across the US. That was the chapter registration that I was talking about. And then there's the dual task of setting up new chapters and closing down dormant chapters. Okay, so the current states we are registered in is are California, where we are incorporated as well, Florida, so you guys have heard, Texas, Washington, are places we are actually like good and we don't have to worry. Texas, I think we don't have to worry till they ping us and say give us some information. So we're like good forever. California, Florida, and Washington are have like an annual reporting requirement, which the secretary team will take care of. So New York, Connecticut, and North Carolina, we are registered, but then there are problems there. So this was back in the day where we tried to entrust the responsibility to chapters, but probably did not do a great job communicating it. So I think New York is using the wrong entity type for the organization. Harindra knows about it, you guys know. Connecticut is registered, in Connecticut we're registered as Asha for Education, Yale. And North Carolina, It's Asha for Education, RTP or something like that. So yeah, which is why, again, and since we are also hiring an external firm now to kind of do all these registrations for us and set all these things right, at least for the first couple of years, we'll see, everything. Do the registrations with them the first year, do the renewal process with them 1 year, try to understand everything which needs to be done so that we don't screw up anymore. And if we have volunteer bandwidth, we can not hire them and do it ourselves. And if you have bandwidth crunch, you can still continue to engage them and get these legalities out of the way. So all registrations are handled centrally. So please do not try to register anything to everyone out there. Okay, so like I said, we're working with an external firm. So we are registering in all states where we have a chapter. And we're also registering in all states where we make more than $3,000, which was an arbitrary number we came up with. So even if it is like random donations, if it's more than 3,000, registration costs $100. So we said, okay, let's register at that place. So registrations will be done in 22 states where we have chapters or an operation. And 13 states do not require any registration to operate. So we should be good in as much as 35 states. So that should cover everywhere where we have volunteers. The only thing is, if we have a virtual chapter and we have someone from, I don't know, North Dakota volunteering, we might have to register there if that person is very engaged and starts soliciting funds for Asha.
So the annual reporting that you mentioned about, it's mostly financial reporting, or what kind of information do you need?
It's mostly financial reporting. So overall revenue, overall expenses, and like the state revenue in the state.
I think he's talking about the annual report.
Annual
No,
reporting.
for this.
And then like information on like the board of directors, and they usually need one contact person who's the registered agent to whom they can send any notices to.
So central will do all the.
Yeah. Only thing is we'll ping chapters to get a volunteer to sign up to be the registered agent. So it's usually here it's a U Florida volunteer who will get any legal notices if they send us something, saying your registration is going to expire, or this paperwork is not right. Then they'll send it to that registered volunteer. But most states also typically send you an email or send it to the central address we give them. So we are good in that sense. Okay, so this is the status of AFE in terms of chapters. So we have 53 chapters, 37 in the US, 6 in Europe, 1 in Canada, and 10 in India right now. So the 10 includes the 6 UP chapters I talked about and 4 where the 4 big cities. So the 4 big city chapters operate pretty much as we do here. Actually, no, 3 of the 4 big city states except Chennai. So Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Mumbai. No, actually, let me take that back again. So it's just Bangalore and Hyderabad. Bangalore and Hyderabad operate like we do here. So they raise funds and then they support NGOs, which are distinct from Asha. Whereas Asha Mumbai runs their own centers. And then Asha Chennai runs their own projects, multiple of them. And they run it under the banner of Asha Trust. And Asha Trust is registered in UP, where they have like 6 different chapters in different villages, and each of them operate different projects. So that is still something which we are trying to figure out as to how to structure those with the lawyers, whether to call them like satellite chapters or because most of the UP chapters do not have very good connectivity. They do not have a good understanding of English to kind of read through ARCs, vote on them, and they have told us in part saying, we'll agree to whatever is being done there, but we really can't participate because we're not able to. So in the last Asha India conference, Asha Chennai kind of volunteered to say we'll be the liaison. So we'll tell you guys what's happening with Asha US, and we'll update you during the Asha India conference. So.
But if they're legally different, why do they need to know what's happening in ARC here?
So what we do is they don't. But what we do is we say that if you're trying to use Asha's name, you also have to abide by Asha's principles and processes. So if ARC says that we are going to, I don't know, most of the things are not applicable, right? So if ARC says that these are the minimum requirements for a project, or this is the minimum thing you need to put on your website to be able to showcase to donors or anything like that, right? We want the other Asha entities also to kind of honor that. So there are two youth chapters. So one is Asha Seattle has a youth wing, and then Asha Arizona has a kids wing, which is a youth wing. And so that is the state of chapters. So we'll send out a note to all the chapter lists with the updated chapter number, and please update all your communications with those numbers.
What is it before?
I don't know.
Maybe-
Okay.
Okay.
It's a plus all this minus that. So this is all the things which we have done in the last couple of years. So this doesn't mean that those chapters went bad right now. It just means that we ended up closing them now. So a lot of these things had just been pending. Those chapters existed on paper, and we never really proceeded to close them for a very long time. And finally, all we've been doing is just shutting down chapters. So Asha Arizona closed down, but the Asha Arizona Kids Wing is still active. So we are trying to figure out how that's going to work. Cleveland kind of voluntarily closed down. So there were I think 3 or 4 volunteers who said, let's try for 2 years to try to revive this. At the end of 2 years, they said, you know what, this is not working, so we're going to gracefully shut down. So they handed out like all email accounts and mailing lists to Central. They said, include it in your VAR lists. They transferred their projects to another chapter, transferred their funds to another chapter, and said, okay, we're going to cease operation. DC and Houston shut down because the volunteers pretty much moved out. Many of them just moved out or got busy with other things in their life. Shanti Kumar moved out to Tampa. So he had been trying for a while to revive Houston. Knoxville, again, the story was that the volunteers moved to Boston, and
They're not active in Boston.
well, they moved to Boston, and so we had to shut down Knoxville. So the rest of them are actually chapters which have been like inactive for a very long time. So MHP, Oxford, Philly, Salt Lake, and Santa Barbara, we just closed them down. Right, right now, Ann Arbor has 1 volunteer, and they said, yeah, so he said, I've been trying, but I think now he has given up, so we'll probably just
So he is willing to be part of the virtual chapter?
Yeah. So the idea is to just ping all these people back, the 1 people in each of these places, and say, So I'll cover the virtual chapter next. So satellites, we have like 5 new satellite chapters. So satellites are how we start a new chapter, and then kind of teach them the ways of Asha before they can be spun off to form an independent chapter. So as soon as we shut down DC, a fresh set of volunteers pinged from DC saying we want to revive it. So that's good. In Tampa, we have Shanti Kumar trying to start a chapter there. And then Pittsburgh, UCLA, and LA were 3 different chapters. And potentially USC also pinged us, but we don't know the commitment levels of those volunteers. Houston had like volunteers move from different places to Houston. So we're trying to see if they can start up something there. And Arizona, after we shut them down, ASUs, a couple of ASU volunteers were interested, but one of them just made a few days ago, actually a few weeks ago, saying that she's going to move to Alabama or something. So.
And Arizona to that list.
Okay, so Harendra's grouse, you wanted complaints. Was that chapters, so we need to have a mentor chapter for each of the satellites we start. And we have not been able to find any signups for mentor chapters because, I don't know why. I don't know why you guys are mentoring anyone.
So what kind of things do the mentor chapter, like how much effort would the mentor?
So basically, anytime they have a question about something, they'll ping you.
But
So
not like attend their meetings or something.
You don't have to attend the meetings or
Nothing like
anything.
that.
So Stanford is mentoring 3 of those chapters right now, which is effectively just me and Harendra doing it.
Yeah, that's what we don't know.
So
Yeah,
We don't even know. Like,
no, we talked about it in our meetings. They're meeting minutes. But yeah, so
But don't you also have to handle treasury?
yeah, the Stanford Treasury is doing that.
Yeah, so because that's what Ashanda does.
Yeah.
So there'll be some amount of that. You will have to make sure the checks are coming in and like, make sure receipts are being sent out to their donors. So there'll be a little bit of that. And then I think pretty much, answering questions. And it also depends upon the level of mentoring. For example, Padmanabha, who works heavily with Radhe, so he does all the project-related question mentoring and teaching them how to go about and all that. So it's different levels. And so I handle all the transactions and making sure all their donors are getting their receipts. rather. At least for the first year or two after that.
So yeah, what we really want to do is probably start the virtual chapter, because then any new chapter request, we can just say, start attending these meetings. If they attend a few of those meetings and have a few of their friends show up and they're interested, then you can actually start them and worry about investing all this time and effort, and have the virtual chapter just running all the time. So
would it help if there was a process defined that these are the first 10 steps that a mentor shall? It's probably already defined.
yeah, you just need it's already defined. We probably need to state that experience. So Harindra sends out these requests to the chapters at AshaNet, which goes to all the chapter coordinators, but we never hear back from anyone. So maybe it never gets discussed in chapter meetings, but yeah. Maybe the chapter coordinator is okay, I'm so swamped with work that I don't want to take this anymore. So, which is what I'm guessing is happening. Which is why the virtual chapter will be really good, because you can also say this is the way a new volunteer just enters Asha. You have these volunteer training modules, have maybe like monthly new volunteer orientations, like done at a central level, where even you can just send chapter volunteers to say, this is where you go learn about Asha if you want. So that can work too. We just need like at least a small team to start work on that before we can do it. Yeah. Otherwise, what we're doing right now is the core team serving as mentor. But the third option is to not start chapters till you find a mentor, which is just plain stupid. So these are the two youth chapters I talk about. So in the ARC this time, there's also like guidelines for youth chapters, which we have been following kind of unofficially, saying there needs to be a main chapter which takes care of them, be responsible for the finances and all that. We're just putting that on paper so that chapters which want to start a youth chapter in that area will be aware of what it entails. So there were requests from Princeton recently and one other chapter saying Berkeley that they wanted to start a youth wing. And this will hopefully give them some guidelines. And starting a youth chapter is great because you're catching them young. High school kids are always trying to beef up their resumes for college apps. They are willing to do a lot of work. Many of them are genuinely interested. So consider that if they are like local schools. I don't know about you, Florida, but the rest of the chapters. And yeah, all it takes is one volunteer from the chapter to kind of keep an eye on them. Hopefully, they'll also go to the universities and start chapters there and spread the word of Asha. Yeah, the other thing we in the ARC, it's there as to what's going to happen if the mentor chapter goes away, but the youth chapter is alive, like what's happening in Arizona, who kind of takes care of, who keeps an eye on them now. So that's.
Is that something the virtual chapter could do?
Now, if the virtual chapter is just newbies, then probably not. So right now we are leaning towards having at least one or two sets of parents sign up to kind of be the liaison. So that we can kind of tell them what is expected, what is required, and they are responsible for everything. Okay, handing it over to Anu for the project updates.
Okay. Yeah, so Central Projects team, there are about 5 or 6 of us, and who are part of the Central Projects team. And I guess again, if somebody's interested, I'm forever making my pitch about anybody interested. Please reach out so you can be a part of this next time, or even participate in any of the things we're doing. So quick update. So we support roughly around 200 projects in India, and we've seen about a 10% growth in the amount of funds we've transferred and supported NGOs in India from 2013 to 2014. And then in 2015 already, you can see we've disbursed close to about 1.46 million. Yeah, and that's that. So what is the main focus of the Central Projects team? And basically, the long-term goal is essentially we want to transform Asha for education into a knowledge organization that focuses on value. So those are a lot of big words. Knowledge organization that focuses on value. What does that mean? Knowledge, as we've seen yesterday and we'll be seeing more of today, within Asha we have tremendous amount of knowledge that is already there with volunteers, the NGO partners, the stewards, and so on. And so capturing that is critical. So knowledge needs to be harvested. We also need to share. Again, you saw a lot of that happen yesterday. And also then we apply. So we need to learn, share, and apply it and grow from there. So that's pretty much the goal of the Central Projects team. So then the question becomes, what are we defining as value? And sorry, I need to give credit to Anand Jani, by the way. So he is the Central Projects Coordinator. He is in Asha, London, and he's not here, so I'm presenting on behalf of him. So essentially, he's been driving a lot of these programs along with PJ and others. So that said, yeah, so what do we define as value? So this is the first basic thing, which is why we all are volunteering with Asha, which is the personal value, which is, are we delivering the goals of the project to the stakeholders, which in this case would be primarily the children, the project partners, and so on. And then the second thing is technical value. And what we define that is for the resources that we are investing in terms of human resources, money, funds, and so on, are we basically capturing the goals in the right way? And also, more importantly, how are we measuring them? How do we even measure an outcome? And then the third thing is allocative value, which is we gain knowledge from the technical value, and then we figure out how to allocate it. So allocation of funds, allocation of human resources, and so on. So a simple example would be, for example, Asha Atlanta supports a project in Gujarat, GVT, and we have a different pieces of it. So they focus on teacher training, which is called the Sikshana Teacher Training Program for teachers in government schools, primary teachers. And they're doing an excellent job. And pretty much like whatever they mentioned, can they read, write, count, and do all that? I've visited them and we see that they are, by the time they're age 5, these children can actually, in rural villages, tribal children, can write sentences in English much better than I can say a 5th grader in maybe a metro. Like, they can do addition, division, and so on. And that's purely because GVT heavily focuses on teacher training programs. GVT also focuses on supporting bicycles, providing bicycles for girls who are cycling 14 kilometers a day to get to school. And then GVT also focuses on vocational training once these girls come to class 12 in these rural villages and so on. So then the question for Atlanta becomes, how do we divide our money? How do we divide our time? And so that is what we are talking about, allocative value. But then for that, I need information from the technical value. So I need to go and gather this out. So we have these measurements that we work with them, with the Sikshana program and so on. So that's kind of an idea of what I'm talking about here. And the thing is, there are some partners who do a very good job and it makes our life so much easier. And then there are others who have no idea. And I'm sure all of us have seen this across all our projects. Is there some very good and some, it's not that they're not doing good work, but they're not being able to measure it and learn from it and apply it. And that is where I think the Central Projects team comes in. So because we can help them gather this information, give them the tools.
Could you please step up to the podium for the benefit of the
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so the first step for this is to design the outcome frameworks for basic education. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. And again, this is a huge debatable topic, but I think at this point, for lack of any better way, I think it's important that we gather that information. And so a big part of it is Anand has been working with the University of London and Imperial College and so on to design these frameworks, outcome frameworks for basic education. Then the next thing is vocational and technical education. And this is also what we've been doing at the Central Projects level, is trying to gather information on what are the various vocational and technical skills training programs presently being done within our project partners, and gather that information, sort it through it, and figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then try to give it back to other projects who are not doing this to help them learn and say, hey, look, here's what they've done, here's what worked for them, classified urban, rural, semi-urban, and say like, okay, maybe you can try this, maybe this will work for your scenario, and so on. So all of that. And then third thing is malnutrition. and this is again, it came up very much yesterday. It's like if our kids are not well fed and they show up hungry, then what's the point, right? So how are we also tracking malnutrition? This is a very broad definition, and we're just starting to get into the space. So it'll probably, like, again, it's all up for grabs. Whoever wants to work, please come forward. And it's just the idea that, okay, how are we tracking malnutrition across our projects? What are we doing about it? And if there are people who are already working on this and have seen some success, how can we learn from them and apply it across? And also CSR, we presented our own yesterday. So that's pretty much the other piece of it, is also like how to help our various project partners obtain CSR. So that, and then, so the achievements thus far are, we have a very good working relationship with the central team. So, I mean, between Anand and the projects team and the central team, there is a very good, I think it's pretty nice and smooth, and everybody's on the same page. So that's something I think has worked very well for us in the last year or so. So then the project partners email list, and this was something very key for us. And this was something that was set up earlier this year, and or late last year, I forget, but this has been valuable for us because, for example, for the CSR, all I did was basically send out an email to the project partners email list. The project partners are all the NGO partners whom we work with. And this is where I first reached out to get all the information, and they are just very forthcoming. It helps, of course, if they're proficient in English and so on, but then regardless, I think it's been a valuable tool for me personally, at least for CSR. Same thing, again, we've used the same project partners email list. We sent out a survey recently, Rajiv did, with trying to gather vocational training information. So that's the other piece I mentioned earlier.
Can you add that if your project partner is not on that list, contact the project team so that we can.
How would we know?
But that's sorry?
Well,
Can we see if any of on the list?
just send it nevertheless, and then we'll, it's already added, then I can say it's there.
It's pretty active, so if your project partners would know if they're on the list.
Yeah, they're on the list, they keep getting, so Anand is very active about sending these emails. So actually, if you're a steward, and you should also be on that list. So that's the other thing.
I'm on the list, but I don't know. Like, a lot of the project partners keep applying, so usually we know. But
There's a digest that comes out, and also we get like individual emails. So I'm thinking, if you're a project steward, then automatically anybody who's a project steward, they should know that they've been active. All their project partners should be on that list. But I guess,
so
yeah.
Maybe what we can do is pull off all the email IDs of the project partners from the checklist, because it's there in the receiver email, and then just add all of it.
Yeah.
Send a request to all of it.
Okay. Let's do that. The action item for others. Make sure. Okay.
No, there is a receiver email there in case of something.
Or should we send an email to Anand and have him check if, or if you're not sure of your project partner, then maybe send an email to Anand and he can quickly check, I guess.
Yeah, okay. You don't want him taking 300.
Nah, that's true though.
I think it might be better if we just send it. Like, I think money could be added twice, but reduce the redundancies later.
Okay. Yeah. And then, so then the next piece is the teams to design the outcome frameworks has been put together, and this is again primarily what Anand has been doing in London, and they've been collaborating with University of Oxford, London School, and so on. So these are formal collaborations, and for all of that, and then the CSR team. So that's that. That's it. Yes.
I have one question. So just like keep track of like chapters, make sure that chapters that are not active are being pinged and asked about their activity. So I was also thinking, because even though projects are individually handled by chapters, is there a way where we could see if a particular project hasn't been funded for like 2 years? We still claim that a particular chapter is actually supporting it. But we have pinged the chapter to make sure that project is actually being funded, or what's the delay in actually funding that, because overall it's also the experience of the project partner. And I know there was a guideline sent out recently about how to work with project partners and what's expected from like stewards and things like that, but also just making sure that like chapters don't fall back in making disbursements on time, because we already do it through our Treasury system. So I was wondering if the projects team can actually coordinate and say, hey, you Florida, you haven't released funds to this project, but you claim to be supporting it for the past 2 years. So what's happening?
Okay.
Why is the delay? Kind of thing.
So is that something we should be working jointly with Treasury, or how
So,
would we check? Or
when Padmanabha was the project coordinator, we were doing something like Padmanabha would at least once a year he would check to see if there is any project that hasn't been funded in the last 2 years. If it has not been funded, then we would bring the project steward and we would bring the chapters to see what's going on.
okay.
And if there's no response, we would just mark the projects as
Okay. Okay, so that's something.
So that's something.
We
I think
did that last in 2012.
Abuja is currently starting an effort to go through all the project pages, so maybe we can just have this along. As
Okay. Okay.
I'll start an email.
Okay. And I'll write.
Rajiv just WhatsApped me and said project stewards can just ping their project partners and say, are you guys getting
Emails.
random emails from Asha?
Yeah, I was thinking that's like, yeah. Yeah, Anand will send at least 3 emails a week. So he's very active.
But those are very insightful. Sometimes you would quote articles from here and there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't get me
Very
wrong. I'm just
very
teasing, but yes, they're very valuable emails, absolutely. But no, you will get emails from Anand. That is the point. So they could not have missed them. So yeah. Okay. Thanks. It's okay.
Are we running out of time also?
3 minutes.
Cool. So for those I don't think I know everyone here. So my name is Lithara. I'm currently helping with the Asha Treasury, along with 5 other people, or 5 of us in total. Akshay in the back, Abuday, Venki, Naresh. You probably hear from all of us at some point. So we are responsible, I guess, for the day-to-day management of the accounts, but also the reporting of the financial statements on an annual basis. So we've been relatively busy, as PJ mentioned, since June 2014. Have tried to get, so we spent the first about 6 months of the new core team transition reconciling the 2012, 2013, and 2014 bank statements, which were never done, making sure the database, the Treasury database, which is currently our authoritative source of financial information, was updated, and then getting the independent audits done for the first time ever, and publishing and updating our website with the financial statements for the last 3 years. So I think those are kind of some of the major hurdles in the state registrations, and as well as the 4-star Charity Navigator rating. So hopefully we're kind of caught up now and trying to stay caught up. We've amended our 2012, 2013 tax returns and finished a timely filing of 2014. So that's kind of some of the big ticket items. As PJ mentioned, the independent financial statement audit for 2012, 2013, and 2014 was a qualified opinion, mainly based around the fact that our internal controls Asha-wide are weak. That means our processes are very decentralized. We have a lot of volunteers touching our incoming and outgoing money with little to no accountability. And so we've kind of, given our structure, it's hard to try to mitigate all those issues, but I think we've put in place enough controls or into that we should be able to get to a clean 2015 opinion. So some of the things we've done is we've transitioned to a centralized Wells Fargo lockbox, as PJ mentioned, which is supposed to receive all our incoming donations. It completely eliminates any volunteer interaction, including the central team's interaction with the revenue cycle. And again, if your chapter is, last pitch, if your chapter is still getting local checks, please transition them to PO Box 398080, San Francisco, California. And that's also probably from a operational standpoint, the greatest thing about that is it cuts down from the date on the check to the date of deposit that a donor sees on their bank account down to 3 to 4 days, as opposed to approximately 9 weeks, which is what we saw in 2012 to 2013 and the first half of 2014. What else? We've tried to set up and monitor the use of Square at all chapters. Again, this has to do with the auditor saying that we have cash that's sitting around with volunteers that could stop volunteering tomorrow, and then it's hard to kind of get that cash back, and even really at a central level ensure that all that cash is being reported accurately.
What is Square?
Square is like the little device that allows for credit card transactions. So hopefully, I mean,
Today the first time we'll use it, so.
yeah, the ideal is that we bring cash transactions down to zero. I don't think we're gonna force the zero, so hopefully it will be a slow but sure transition down to zero.
So regarding the Square, how different would be than just having them get on, if you're using a smartphone to use the Square, then same difference of getting on the website and have them?
Yeah, there's no difference. Yeah. The other thing that the accountant has been looking for that we have not been able to provide is any kind of planning that we've been doing from a financial standpoint. I'm sure you know, like most organizations, you have a budget, you work towards your budget, and you kind of can prove or disprove the fact that the money that you're reporting is kind of in line and accurate because it's kind of how much we budgeted for. Here's what it is. We're reasonably comfortable that it's reasonably accurate. So we have introduced chapter budgets over the last few months. You might have seen an email from me, hoping to consolidate that into an Asha-wide budget. And then this is an aggressive goal, but I would like to have quarterly monitoring at Asha-wide level saying NYCNJ last year raised 100K. This year you are suddenly reporting 200K in one day. Like, what was that event that kind of pushed you over the edge, or vice versa? You said you planned for 500,000, it's halfway through the year and I only see 25,000 reported. Is that because the chapter is naturally kind of dying down, and do you require central support, or also like is that just some kind of breakdown in your financial reporting process? And lastly, we are staying reconciled to the bank on a monthly basis, as opposed to trying to catch up every 3 or so years.
If I can pause, so with respect to all the checks going to the central directly.
Yep.
So how does it? I haven't worked with the Asha Treasury too much, but earlier we at the chapter level we'd get the checks, we'd sort of make a rough note of it, send it back, and I know that takes time, but we know what checks we're getting. And now for number one thing is some donors don't really know the differentiation between chapter and central Asha and stuff, so they might mean to donate to say our chapter, but they're just going to say Asha for education and say send it over there.
Yeah.
Do we stand the risk of losing some donations like that? And number two, how would we know? Maybe we don't know all our donors, and it's not like we can look through a list and we might know that this person is ours. So how are we planning to reconcile something like that?
I'm absolutely not going to deny that that is a risk of the centralized process. If the donor, so I've been doing the data entry for the checks. So I usually know, like I can know or tell just based on either the address. Sometimes they'll put the name of the volunteer on the check or something like that, the event name, project name. We've been relatively diligent about looking that up and trying to tie it back, mainly also because I'm trying to justify that this strategy works and doesn't create a lot of turbulence at a chapter level. But I'm not going to deny that that's a risk. If a donation comes in with no chapter affiliation, no volunteer name, no project name, it's likely to go into central funds now. I think, to be honest, that's a risk we're going to have to live with if we are hoping to get to a clean audit opinion. The ways to kind of mitigate that is we are saving down the images of all the checks that come into Lockbox on a monthly basis into Google Drive that your treasurer should have access to.
I know it's a lot of work, but there are chapters like SV in Seattle that literally go check by check by check and say, this is ours, this is ours, this is ours, this is ours. And if you let us know, we can make the updates.
Yeah, sorry, just to add on. So maybe, I'm not again sure how much of resources involved with spending, but since we're going away from this zero overhead policy, maybe it makes sense to look through some more professional software and stuff that we can make this easier. For example, I've worked with a couple of others where at the chapter level, we have some, I don't know what it's called some sort of a batching machine where we just scan the checks and it goes to the logbox directly instead of having to mail it. And number two, again, I was doing the image of the check sort of thing, but then we were told not to have any copies of the checks because of, again, some legal reasons that we're not allowed to store pictures of the checks. So maybe you want to go through that as well, but
I'll definitely look through that.
because
So currently the way our process is that when the check gets mailed to Wells Fargo scans everything that we get at the end of the day, and we're just saving it down. But yeah, we can. That's not something that has crossed my mind, so I will look into if there's any legal issues with saving down.
You may have this as a question too, like how do we know? Like because now I think when something goes through, I just ping you pretty much on something on Treasury. But is there any other way we can check, or we just keep on checking on Treasury to see if it's been credited or?
You really just have to keep checking the Treasury to see if it's been credited. I wish I had a better.
I mean, people used to wait 4 months before.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess before at a chapter level there was more comfort because it felt like there was some control over the process, and now it feels out of
mail it, right? So now we give an address and they tell us they mailed it, and then it's a black hole until you finally get it, and we can't send them 100 emails either, right? So,
And I do think, and I'll talk about this later, I think one of the things we're hoping to do is, because right now it's literally Vinky and I typing those up. So at a central level, this has increased our workload an absurd amount. What every chapter was doing, we are now doing, the two of us. And in addition to that, we now have to follow up on essentially each check and say, who does this belong to, who does that belong to? So
would it help if we automatically had whoever is mailing the checks send the chapter a copy of it, like photo or something?
I don't think that's a feasible thing to implement, to be honest. To be honest, I'm trying to get chapters transition to this mailing address has been so painfully difficult that I'm not sure that getting donors to email us is really going to be. And plus,
not donors email us. So what I was suggesting is, so right now what I'm doing is, and actually I need to check if that's even allowed, is that if a donor is going to mail a check to the logbox, I tell them to send me a photo of that check. So I know what that is. Is that even okay for now? I have a photo of that check.
Probably, because I'm saving the photo of the check images.
So that way, the hands-free policy is okay if I get an email scan.
Yeah, so I guess the hands-free policy, the issue is that you or I, really anyone, shouldn't be sitting around with like checks in their apartment.
Okay, so but I can have a photo of it in my email and I should be okay.
Yeah.
And then number two is I use that because many times if a donor is sending a check through a company, it'll be like some random name, something, and I wouldn't know who actually sends it. If you reached out to me and asked me, then I would have no idea.
Yeah.
So that was the other reason I'm doing it. And I'm just wondering if we make it a policy, I don't know, to save heartache for everybody. We just have chapter.
Say this is something some chapters are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the first thing chapters should do is just reach out to all the donors and say, just put the chapter name anywhere.
Yeah. And I really, really encourage you to please transition as soon as possible, because there are a key handful of chapters that will hold us back from our opinion. And they're not here, but Seattle, Silicon Valley are hoarding all their checks.
So I saw that I understand why you need to actually reduce cash transactions and move away.
Yeah.
But I also know of like several donors who specifically give us cash donations because they want to avoid the credit card fees.
Yes.
So there's no way to actually get over that right now, right?
There isn't really a way to get over that right now. And I understand where that's coming from their minds, but I would try to have that conversation with them that those $1 or $2 that we're saving could, yeah.
So a couple of questions. First is, why can't we deposit these checks at local branches of Wells Fargo? And they take care of then sending it to their lockbox. It's the same organization.
No, so
It's not the case?
well, first of all, really, we're trying to centralize again all the financial reporting. So, the major issue with our process currently is that we do have those local touch points. So there's random people, like me included, right? At any moment, there could be 10 checks from PO Box 322, New York, sitting in my apartment. Now, should I just tomorrow be like, I'm tired of this? Forget about it. I'm walking away. Now those 10 checks are still sitting in my apartment that might never get deposited, or they're Asha's checks that just. So I think we want to move away from that local touch point. And now the way the process is, it really is very smooth. It's just one address, and there's literally nothing we need to do. As long as the donor mails the check to the correct address, it gets automatically deposited. And then they don't see the fact that it's increased workload for the central team. Those are all internal issues, but from a donor perspective, it's so much smoother, because in the past we've had donors saying, I sent you a check 9 weeks ago, and it's not even deposited yet. So.
And the second thing is, I'm pretty sure Wells Fargo has those mobile apps on smartphones. So if people, I don't know whether someone can just take a picture of the check if they don't have an account with Wells Fargo and just say that, okay, I'm transferring or depositing in the logbook. Is that a possibility?
No, because I do think you need to be logged into the receiving bank account, and that's probably not something we want to.
Receiving bank.
Yeah.
So one question I have is, once the checks go to the central account, which is good to have it centralized, but say if you want to acknowledge saying, oh, we got your donation, thank you, blah, blah. I guess at the chapter level, there's no way to know, other than the treasurer who's connected to the central treasury, checks every week or every whatever time period and tells us that, hey, somebody gave us $5,000, let's send them something, or a thank you note, or free tickets, or whatever.
Currently, the way that so the treasury database, which has always been used, that gets updated on a monthly basis with all the checks that were received that month. Once we do the data entry, and then your treasurer is kind of responsible for managing.
And connect with them.
Yeah. So I don't think the chapter treasurer is an eliminated position just because of the centralization, because there are still things at a chapter level that you're gonna have to do. Okay. It's just and in some ways I think it's good as taking the manual, very labor intensive work at a chapter treasurer level, which was the data entry, away from kind of people who might get burned out just doing like non-value added stuff like data entry. Now we are doing that non-value added stuff and getting.
Is there a way to have cash transactions such that it qualifies for a clean audit?
Probably not, because of our structure where anyone is kind of. I think if there were most organizations have like a few key people that you can hold responsible and say they can have cash transactions, but then they say this is the only person who does it. Here's why she's accountable, and here's how we hold her accountable. Since we don't,
it's very easy.
Yeah.
What if it's someone that we paid, like the Stanford people that we hired to do the.
If it's someone you're in a contract with.
Yeah. Then it would be fine.
You can hold them legally.
Right.
So then it kind of defeats the purpose of having a cash transaction because that overhead goes up, right?
Right.
I have a question. I'm mainly involved with Team Asha, which deals with small donations, cash donations for each of our runners.
Okay.
How is that going to be handled then? I mean, do we need to have a sheet that's very specific about if you're going to write a check, write it to this address and get that information, then a runner gets to keep that sheet, which he then gives to you so you get credit for it. And then they know to send it to that lockbox. And then, sometimes you get a donation of $5, $10, $20.
Yeah.
I think we cannot overnight. We're not saying we're done with cash
Right.
transactions. I think we're just trying to reduce it as much as possible. So again, we give people the option that if you want to donate, we'll bring the card reader, so we have one of our own, and people can swipe their cards. But when we get cash transactions, we make sure we have an account. And what we've done all along is keep track, make sure the runners get credit. and it's involved, it's put into the system and stuff.
Because we just had a fundraiser where we raised $500, but it was cash and it was for a cooking class and things like that. So then we just handed the cash over.
Yes. And I think, I mean, that's fine. I don't think we're trying to push to go to zero cash. Currently most chapters are sitting on $500 of cash on hand, which is, I think, an acceptable amount in the grand scheme of things. But also, I think the thing that becomes important with cash transactions that sometimes it's very hard at a central level to manage is that it shouldn't, just because it's cash, it shouldn't be reported as net income. So if you raised $100 and spent $5, you shouldn't be just saying I have $95. Like it should be reported as a $100 donation and $5. Yeah, so that again becomes difficult to manage. That's something that are still work in progress, hoping to transition away from the Treasury database and move to QuickBooks, which is a more standardized tool, which will help us with the audit, with the 990s, and hopefully streamline the process so that someone who doesn't have an accounting background or a finance background can continue kind of the momentum that we've built. We are hoping to get an external accounting team to help with the data entry again at the central level, probably getting close to 300-400 checks on a monthly basis that we are doing the data entry for. We definitely need to standardize accounting practices across all chapter programs. Each chapter kind of has their own way of accounting for things. And with the reporting process, in theory, there should be one person that has a good understanding of every transaction so that we know how to categorize it. And the way we talked about, are we defining core volunteers the same way across chapters? Are we defining every transaction the same way across chapters? Our current setup makes it very hard at the end of the year to understand whether my definition of a non-donation transaction and your definition of a non-donation transaction is the same thing. I don't really have a solution for how to get there, hopefully soon.
Would QuickBooks, I don't know if it's on the enterprise level that you bought it or it's more of a per user level. Would it be a good idea to roll it out at the chapter level, or it will be too much work for that knowledge transition to happen at every chapter level?
Yeah, so I think because we're one reporting entity, the chapter is really an internal kind of legalese almost. From a legal perspective, we're one entity, and so there's QuickBooks, I think, needs to be managed at one level because, again, it cannot become my NYCNJ's definition of a transaction is different from Team Asha's, from Silicon Valley's. But that being said, we are, with trying to transition to QuickBooks, one of the key, I think, hurdles will be how to get chapters access to their own financial statements.
So basically, if chapters are managing their own QuickBooks, they can probably share the file with you, and you could probably import it directly. That might help lessen the work. I don't know whether it will increase the work at the chapter level.
So these were discussions we've had for the last 2 years, and well, a couple of things. One is the reason 2012, 2013 and stuff were so bad was because we had to compile data across so many chapters. Even if one chapter delays it or does a bad job, then the whole organization is not able to move to it. So all these things which are critical for the organization to function as an organization, we want to make sure that we have processes in place so that happens irrespective of quality of bandwidth, either at the chapter or the central level. So even for this, at the central level, we are looking at what kind of a firm we can engage with, which will do all the data entry for us, which will do all the QuickBooks entry for us, so that even when we don't have Uttara, which is not going to happen, but then planning for that, right? We still are able to do it.
Prior than the freezer.
So that's where it's coming from.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into my last point, which is I am very, very committed to making sure that this is a sustainable process. This whole kind of Naresh, Akshay, everyone has kind of worked the last few months to catch up on so many years worth of data that is not something I'm hoping to ever go back to. So how can we make this momentum sustainable despite the turnover, despite having maybe a person that might not fully understand the accounting practices, or how can we ensure that we always have at least one person that kind of understands accounting practices. And then lastly, this kind of overall, based on the work we've done over the last few months, the 2012, 2013, and 2014 financial statements, as you can see, the revenue numbers are kind of dropping a little, and project disbursements are going up, which gives us a net income of a negative number in 2014, which is probably good. It's what we're looking for. Since our Asha-wide working capital ratio at the end of fiscal year 2014 is still 3.37 times. That's across chapters, including general funds, and we're hoping to get to 1.5 by the end of this year. How we're gonna get there? So each chapter, has been tasked with trying to get their own ratio to 1.5, and the rest will roll over to general funds. Obviously, making general funds. We'll probably stay at the 3.37 unless we can make some significant strides in dispersing money. Again, our overhead numbers are increasing. All of that has to do with the audit costs, the state registrations, really things that are, in my opinion, not debatable, just things that need to get done. Top 3 disbursements, I think all 3 years have consistently been Aveli Asha Trust and Reward Trust, and the top fundraising event has been the Silicon Valley Team Asha Running, which in 2014 raised $245,000. And that's kind of all I have from Treasury perspective, I think. Oh, last thing that I forgot to mention is that as of 2014 for the state registration, we have transitioned from a cash basis of accounting, which is kind of a more rudimentary way of doing it. Only report income when you get cash, or a check or a valid form of currency, I guess, and to an accrual basis of accounting, which means you're reporting revenue as soon as there's a commitment made, whether that means the check's going to come in 5 months or 5 days. And as part of that, I think one of the things you'll see if you ever look at the financial statements is that we've now started valuing contributed services, which is donation, donated time, and as a donation and also as an expense. So these numbers for 2014 are adjusted to make them comparable to 2013 and 2014, but the 2014 numbers actually reflect like $249,000 of donated services, which is really volunteer time, lawyer time, that kind of.
So one issue we have a lot of problem with up to the lockbox at the chapter level is matching donations.
Yep.
Because initially we had chapter treasurers actually going and making sure they're registered with individual companies, and then we know exactly what to do. But now I think we have a little bit of confusion of like how it's happening. And when we had our biggest fundraiser this past year, we really lost on a lot of these matching donations because we were not clear. And I know our treasurers also we didn't like follow up that well. But I was thinking if we kind of revisit it and make sure that so I'm guessing the way is like Asha wide is being will be registered by each of these companies, and we have something to give to the employees to make sure that the matching donations are accounted for.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point I forgot to mention. We are trying to centralize the matching process, and mainly a lot of that has to do with the fact now that we're transitioning to an accrual basis of accounting. That means we need to report a matching transaction, not when we receive it, but when we confirm the match with the company. So if each treasurer is kind of confirming their own matches, again, it becomes a nightmare from an accounting perspective. So we are trying to centralize it. I don't think we have a solution, and I was talking about this last night, how to get from PJ donated $100, this $100 from Goldman Sachs is PJ's match, right? I don't know how to get there. If you have any suggestions, I'm happy to.
But that check we eventually wanted to go to the lockbox directly, right, from the company.
Yeah, and actually I think the company checks are, a lot of that transition has been completed for the company checks. But the problem is that now, say Goldman Sachs, right, is gonna write one giant check to Asha for $1,000. So how are we kind of accounting those $100 was PJ's from Florida, and this was with the rest from NYC and that kind of stuff.
Is that very good help if the chapter treasurer had their own separate spreadsheet to keep track and?
If they knew that they're going to get an answer.
Yeah, so that we need to actively
Right.
ask and keep on
Yeah.
saying that, okay.
Yeah, that would help, but also I don't know how to again ensure consistency between.
It's a person by person, chapter by
Yeah.
chapter, different.
Yeah, and also there's some that when the check comes in, it's easily identifiable. So if I know Silicon Valley, they write like Silicon Valley, attention Silicon Valley Team Asha Treasurer. So those checks automatically get routed to Silicon Valley when we do the data entry. But then if someone doesn't write that, it just says Asha for Education. Now that check is lumped into general funds, and how am I ensuring that Silicon Valley is not double counting? Whereas, yeah, so.
So is there like some kind of these guidelines on how companies can write the checks and put it on the notes that we could put on our website? Because I know many Atlanta match companies that they go to the website because they don't know the address many times. And so we have a separate location as like if you're writing us a letter, send it, check this, right? So again, I don't want to tell them the wrong thing and then have them do it. Asha for Atlanta attention in the main line. So is there something you could send out like a template that we can put on our website?
Yeah, I guess so.
So if you got a one-page check from, let's say, Microsoft for like
Yeah.
$1,000, and I sent you a listing saying that $200 was supposed to be matching from someone,
Yeah.
you have a way of accounting it to the chapter?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a way of accounting that to the chapter, correct? But when that first $2,000 check comes in, we are not currently going in to find out what that's with. We just honestly don't have the bandwidth to do.
Yeah, but the company might themselves have a record of.
They do. I don't think we just have the bandwidth to do that breakdown, right?
We need more signups.
Yeah.
All the chapter treasurers who are now free have something to do.
So, we might.
Oh, are we running out of time?
Yeah, just a few slides from the other teams. I just skimmed through.
If you have a Treasury specific question, you can just email us at treasurer@ashanet.org.
So the reason I'm presenting these teams is because the teams are also struggling with the volunteers. So PR team, they are supposed to manage our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube accounts, blog posts, press releases, all of that, but they need people. So if you are willing, and I'm looking at you, so we need that. We used to do calendars, but then we said, oh, we're not doing calendars because we need volunteers to do our annual reports, but then we didn't get that done either because we don't have volunteers. So yeah, there are a lot of things we can do for PR. It's just people who are interested needs to step up, take ownership of even like a small component, and then say, I'm going to do it. The big thing is the 2010 to 2014 annual reports. I managed to collect a lot of articles, managed to get a few of them proofread, few of them edited. Shiva had sent something, Ravi sent an article on Prahasha. So, there are a lot of articles which are there, but you just need to kind of organize everything, make sure it's in a good format. Uttaras, you'll need to send treasury information for that, and then someone needs to coordinate this. So worst case, I'll drop everything else and do this. But yeah, it's very good to at least have a good annual report, because any big donor would want to first look at the annual report. NYC NJ recently had Indra Nui speak at an event, and the first thing she asked was, can you guys send me your annual report? And we did not have anything to send. So, all right.
Have we considered hiring someone to just get this done?
Not yet, but we can.
You mean like a designer, or because we have to compile it ourselves?
Yeah.
No?
I mean, you can get designers who will like put it together.
But if the people think they can do that, because I can throw in a report very quickly, and then my grammar may not be great. So then somebody can do that across all chapters. Why not?
I mean,
An intern or something like.
I think, it doesn't need to be a conversation now, I guess, but.
Yeah. All right. Web team, big things are, we have the WordPress site, so the new Asha website is based on WordPress. It's also a chapter template, which 4 chapters have already used, 6 chapters are developing their sites on it. So easy to, I'm guessing easy, I don't know, Akshay, easy?
Very easy.
Okay, so easy to put together, easy to edit. You don't need to do any PHP, HTML, none of the jazz. So, and it renders well on like all devices without you having to do anything. It even has like drag and drop components. So if you say, I want this sidebar to be dragged to that side, you just have to drag it. So it's that good.
Will this be on the website, this presentation? Because I'm thinking if you can have links to the email addresses.
Yeah. Put everything on the wiki with the presentations and the meeting minutes.
We'll put this presentation on the Asha 24 page.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe have the email addresses like that. It's not easy for us to remember.
Sure. Yeah. So the two things the web team is, I'm hoping will maintain for a long time is the WordPress site and the wiki. So wiki is kind of being used by, I think, maybe 6 or 7 chapters right now, and the central team heavily. And that's where we're putting in all the information we have, which can be edited by anyone. So the problem with the website, where we used to have a lot of information, was access and web knowledge. So a lot of chapters are transitioned to the wiki, where any volunteer can just edit content, add content, modify content. So we're going to go over the wiki in one of the later sessions, just to show how some chapters are using it, how the central team is using it, and what resources are available there. Amit has worked on a new donation interface. Amit from Asha SV, donate.ashaindia.org. So we'll soon be transitioning everything to that. Check it out. It looks really neat and cool. But there's still a lot of pending web work. Big concerns are on our server security. And a very good to have project will be a single sign-on, because anyone who's held a leadership position at a chapter knows how many passwords, how many login IDs, how many portals there are, and yeah. So if we are a geek wanting to do something cool, a single sign-on for Asha would be something fun to do. Fundraising team was effectively just Prasad. So he coordinated WOW 2014 and did a very good job of documenting it. And we also compiled a list of chapter fundraisers, because we are compiling them for the insurance anyway. So we are putting that up on the wiki, and this is going to serve as like an idea base for all the things a chapter can try for events. So if you're looking for like event ideas, you can just browse through that and say, this chapter tried this. Okay, let me ping them to see how it worked out. So hopefully that is something which can take off. WOW 2015, we've sent out a bunch of emails. We've had like very lax response, so we don't know whether chapters really care about WOW. But if you're going to have WOW, we are thinking of moving it to the October to December timeframe, just because that's the only time we are making a lot of effort Asha-wide to publicize and to get to new donors. And donors are very likely to donate during that time of the year, to Thanksgiving to New Year, also because the tax season ends there. So we are trying to concentrate all the effort to that season. So WOW is going to be moved at that time. And if you're on the discussions of the chapters, you'll hear more. So that's it. Anyone has any questions? If not, let's take a couple of minutes break, and then the next session is about the future of Asha. So it's a discussion session. Yeah. Okay. All right. So no break.
Before we continue, so I guess anyone who works with the central team, whether it be the web, Treasury, projects, coordination, I mean, the amount of documentation and work they do is just amazing. I'd like to thank you all for whatever help you've been doing, and I mean, it's insane amount of work, we all understand.
Thanks.